decades, right?
So,
The U.S. government
welcome to the
line was
deep dive.
basically
Today we're plunging into,
supernatural
well,
stuff,
probably
psychic powers,
the coldest,
telepathy,
most secret
seeing
place
things
on
far
Earth.
away with your mind.
Antarctica.
Pure
It really
fantasy,
is the last
that's what
great
they told
wilderness.
everyone.
Yeah, that
I
was
mean,
the
people
public
don't realize
face.
it's
Complete
often
skepticism.
logistically harder
But,
to operate
you know,
there,
while that was the
especially
official story,
drilling deep
behind closed
than,
doors,
say,
something
landing something on Mars.
something
That
much
extreme.
stranger was
And yet
apparently
that's where
going on.
scientists have been drilling
Deep
for
inside
decades,
the
miles
intelligence
down into
community.
the ice. It's a
Right,
really
they're looking
interesting
for
contrast,
clues about
isn't it?
Earth's
Publicly,
past,
it's all
ancient
scientific
air, trapped in
dismissal.
bubbles,
Privately,
maybe
the
unique
Pentagon, the
microbial
CIA,
life, that sort of thing. Time
they're clearly
capsules,
wrestling
basically.
with something
But
very
today's deep
different.
dive
These
is
fantasies
different.
suddenly
We're looking at
become
source documents,
specifically
serious
leaked
strategic
Russian
issue.
materials
Exactly.
that
And
suggest
that
a
worry,
2012
that sort of
expedition
creeping fear
found
about
something,
psychic warfare, it
well,
leads to one
something
of
else
the
entirely.
honestly
Not
most
just
bizarre
microbes.
and top
Some
secret
of the
projects
logs
of the
apparently
whole Cold
called
War.
Object
Project
47.
Sunscreen.
Exactly.
I mean, just
Which
picture
the
it.
internet
An actual
and
government project
conspiracy
trying to
forums
weaponize the
quickly
human mind.
nicknamed the
Funded
demon
off the
beneath
books.
the ice.
Totally secret.
So our
And
mission here is
officially,
to
the
really
cover
trace this
story,
whole
or maybe
story
the
for
initial
you.
idea
How
was
did a scientific
remote
expedition
viewing.
morph into
Right.
this modern myth?
Supposed
We'll map it all out, the
ability for
science, the
trained
leaks,
people
the
to just
disappearances, so you can see clearly what's
perceive
verifiable
distant
and
places,
what's
secret
pure
enemy bases, maybe even
Okay, let's
peek
start
into
at
the
the
future.
beginning.
All
Lake
just
Vostok.
using their
Right.
minds.
Imagine
And
this
we should be clear,
enormous
this
lake,
wasn't some
bigger
like
than Lake
side
Ontario,
hobby. It wasn't
buried
just a
under
few
more than
folks
2
messing
miles
around.
of
Okay.
ice.
This was
That's
a
about
strategic move, a
3,700
direct
meters.
response to what they thought
And the water in
Soviets
that
were
lake
doing.
They were
hasn't seen
urgently
daylight,
trying to get an
hasn't
edge
mixed
in
with
a
the atmosphere
completely
for
new kind of,
maybe-
well, battlefield.
maybe
And that's what we're doing today. We're going to peel back those layers of secrecy,
on our own
really
Incredible.
deep dive into
So
Project
the Russians
Sunstreak
finally drilled through in
and the kind of
2012. The
wild
scientific world was
conspiracy theories
buzzing,
that are still
right?
swirling
What were they
around.
actually
Yeah, because the
expecting?
story
Well, the
goes
hope was
way
for
beyond just
extremophiles.
psychic spying.
Oh,
really
absolutely.
tough, simple
It might
life
have cracked
forms
open the
adapted
door
to
to,
extreme
well,
cold,
alien
pressure,
contact,
and
maybe
darkness.
even
Like a
some
test
sources
case for
suggest
finding life on
interdimensional
icy
conflict.
moons,
It
maybe?
gets pretty out there.
Europa,
It really
Enceladus.
does. Precisely.
So we're going to
It
look
was
at where
seen
it
as
came
this
from, the
huge
really unsettling things that viewers
prize.
reported seeing,
Finding life that
the,
survived there would mean it
weird
could survive
overlaps with
almost
old
anywhere.
occult stuff,
But then,
and
the
these
story takes a
incredible
sharp
claims
turn.
about
The leaked
contacting
logs, these classified
the
documents,
unknown.
mention
So yeah,
Object
settle
47.
in. This is where things get
And
weird.
that's where things get really
So where did
murky.
Sunstreak
We have
even
this
come
one
from?
specific
It
line.
really kicks off back
supposedly
in the
from
early 70s.
someone
There
on
was
the
this
drilling
sort of
support team.
quiet panic brewing in the
Pressure in
intelligence
chamber
world
rose.
during the Cold
There
War.
was
Right.
movement.
Word
We
got
thought it was
out that the
gas,
Soviets were
but then the
pouring
light.
serious
The
money
light
and effort
changed.
into parapsychology.
And not just dabbling. We're talking
It's a
state-sponsored experiments,
The light changed.
telepathy.
It's
moving
just
objects
dripping with
the mind,
implication. It
psychokinesis,
shifts the whole
and
thing from
crucially,
biology to
remote
something
viewing.
Yeah, and when
Unknown.
U.S. intelligence picked
Unsettling.
up
It really
on this,
does. It's not
we
alarms went
found
off.
weird bacteria.
Big
It's
time.
the
The
light
Pentagon
changed.
especially.
That's
You can
pure
imagine
fuel
the fear,
for the
right?
fire.
What if this stuff
Yeah,
is
if
real?
it had just
Even
been
if it only
complex
gives a small
microbes,
advantage.
we'd be
Exactly.
talking
The U.S.
scientific
could be
papers, maybe
completely
Nobel Prize down
blindsided
the
in a
line,
conflict
not
that
demons.
doesn't use bombs
And right
or
after that
spies in
supposed
the
event,
traditional
things get
sense.
even stranger
so this
on the human
perceived
side.
threat, this
Reports
potential
started
psychic
surfacing
gap,
about a
it leads
sub-team
directly to the
involved in the
CIA
drilling.
starting
The
Project
ones who went
Stargate
missing, right?
Which
for
was
several
kind of the
hours.
umbrella
Exactly.
program. And under
Vanished
Stargate, you
shortly
get
after the
these
breach,
sub-projects.
and when they reappeared,
Project
the accounts
Sunstreak
say
was
they
one
were
of them,
completely silent.
run by the
Wouldn't
Defense
say a word
Intelligence
about what
Agency, the
happened.
And then they whisked
DIA,
away into
Mostly
the
through the
instantly.
1980s.
Okay.
Flown out for
Sunstreak
medical
gets going.
evaluation was the official
And
term.
on paper,
And then
its
poof,
job sounds
their names,
well,
their records
almost
apparently just
straightforward for
vanished
that
from
world.
public view.
recruit
And the official
people,
explanation
train them
from the
as
Russian
remote
government.
viewers,
Oh, just a
get them to
temporary
project their
communication failure?
consciousness,
Very
basically,
neat, very tidy.
and
Which
spy
of
on
course
Soviet
sounds
facilities,
completely
gather
unbelievable
intel.
given the context.
Standard
doesn't it?
espionage,
I mean,
just
flying
with
out
a
an
very
entire silent
unconventional
team for a
method.
But that's not
communication
how it
failure
played
now,
out,
It
was it? It
screams
became
cover-up.
clear pretty fast
Even
this
if they
wasn't
just
just
found
about
something
finding missile
scientifically
silos.
sensitive,
So almost
that
right
level
away,
of
the viewers
secrecy,
weren't just
that
describing,
immediate
submarine
disappearance of
pens or
personnel,
radar
it
installations.
just
The
feeds the
data started
narrative that
getting
something truly extraordinary,
Weird
maybe
how.
terrifying.
Well, that was the big
It
turning
creates a
point,
vacuum.
really.
The
And
viewers started
speculation rushes
reporting
in.
things that,
And then you
based
get
on
the
our normal
whistleblower
understanding of
accounts
physics
trying
and
to fill that
reality,
gap.
just like
Shouldn't
Dr.
exist.
Pablo
Things that shouldn't
Kurikov,
exist.
a
Okay, now we're
geologist
getting
supposedly
somewhere.
on the
Yeah.
project.
Yes,
The information
and his
they were
account
bringing
is one
back
of the
was
most
pushing
specific
way past the
and
boundaries
frankly
of what anyone
disturbing.
expected.
His name and
It
section were later
fundamentally
redacted from
challenged
leaked
what the
files,
program was even
which,
supposed to be
again,
doing.
adds to the mystique.
So tell
And
me
what
about
did he
these
allegedly
viewers.
describe
They weren't just
seeing?
random people off
He
the street,
reportedly
right? talked about
Yeah.
a black
Many had
crystalline
military
mass.
backgrounds.
That's right, often
But the
military
key part
personnel.
is, he said it
And
moved
they went
with
through this
intent.
really specific,
intent.
structured
And
training.
he described the sound
Controlled protocols
like
was the
metal
term.
bending
like coordinate
underwater.
remote
Wow.
viewing or
Okay,
CRV.
CRV.
That's
Okay,
genuinely
so it wasn't
creepy.
just
Sounds like something out of
closing your
cosmic
eyes and
horror.
hoping
It
for the
does.
best.
No,
and for
no,
those
very
who believe the
systematic.
story,
They might be
Kurikov's
given just a
subsequent
set of
disappearance from
geographic
records
coordinates
is
or maybe a
basically
random
proof
number
that his
linked
description
to a
hit
target.
too close
Then
to
they'd
the
go through
truth.
these stages,
So
sort
you
of
have the missing
drilling
team,
down,
the vanished
describing sensory
geologist.
details, sketching impressions.
The story gains momentum.
trying to build
and then
a
it catches
picture
the eye
of a
of an
target they knew
independent
nothing about
journalist.
consciously.
Claire Donovan.
Often
Right.
something
By
hidden miles away,
2021, she
maybe
was
even
apparently
sealed
quite
in an
obsessed
assessed the
right there
Vostok
in the room.
rumors
And did it
launched
work?
a crowdfunded
Actually.
investigation.
Well, the
And
early
she started
results
pointing
were
out patterns,
apparently
didn't she?
things that looked like
Intriguing.
ongoing secrecy.
Impressive,
Yeah, she
maybe,
highlighted
but
things
small
like
scale.
unusually high security
sketches that
classifications
looked
around
surprisingly
Vostok
like
data,
a Soviet
certain
factory.
surveillance satellites
Details
being
about
turned
a
off over
hidden
the area
bunker
for
that
maintenance,
later
flight
matched
paths being
spy
rerouted.
photos.
All
Enough to
circumstantial,
keep the
maybe,
funding flowing, but together it
Okay,
paints
so it
a
had some
picture,
legs.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like
But
someone
then,
was
like you said,
actively trying to
things
keep
took a turn.
eyes off
A sharp
that
turn,
region.
yeah,
because it's
it raises
one
that
thing to
classic
sketch a building
question.
you shouldn't know about.
Does
It's something else
excessive
entirely
secrecy,
when you're
even
trained
if
military
meant to
viewers
protect
start
legitimate
reporting
data,
experiences that
actually
just
end up creating
flat out
the
defy the
very
material world
monster
as we
story
know it.
it's trying to
What-
prevent.
I
what
think
kind of
Donovan's
things?
story suggests
Well,
the answer is
get
yes,
this. Some
tragically
viewers started
so.
Because she
reporting
disappeared too.
energy
Yeah.
beings.
When are you
January
Yeah.
2022,
Not people,
near
not
Union
animals,
Glacier
just
Base, which
conscious
isn't
energy
Vostok
forms that
itself,
were
but it's a
apparently
major
watching them while they
Antarctic
were doing
hub.
their
And her
remote
last
viewing.
watching the
message.
viewers. Okay, that's
last
creepy.
message via sat
Others
phone was
claimed they
chillingly
weren't just
brief.
moving across
Something's wrong with the
space,
ice.
but
It's
across
moving underneath
time.
us.
Oh, wow.
Getting
And
glimpses
then,
of
to
ancient
cap it all
history
off,
or
her
even
disappearance
future
coincided
events.
almost
Whoa.
exactly with reports of a
travel.
weird seismic anomaly
There's
detected
one
near the
really
Vostok
famous,
coordinates.
So for
or
the believers,
infamous
that's it.
account.
Cause and effect.
A
the
viewer
demon is active,
insisted
the
they
ice
saw
is
the
moving,
Egyptian
and it got
pyramids
her.
being built.
It connects the
But not
dots
by
in the
Egyptians,
most dramatic way
by,
possible.
quote,
It gives the myth
tall,
a
luminous
real-world victim,
entities.
making it
Luminous
feel much more
entities
immediate and
building the
dangerous.
pyramids.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
that
so we have
sounds like something
the initial
from a,
incident, the
fringe documentary.
disappearances.
Exactly,
the
except
alleged
these were
cover-up.
reports coming
But
from within
for a
a
modern legend
classified
to really
military
thrive,
intelligence
especially
program.
online,
That's what makes you
Yeah.
stop
You
and
need
think.
Well,
Yeah,
you need
definitely.
pictures or
Any
video,
other
right?
examples?
You need
Oh, yeah.
artifacts.
Another
What
one
did the
just
internet
as strange.
provide?
Well,
A
the
viewer
first big
claimed
one
they
dropped in
found hidden
2018.
spacecraft
A short
under the
video
ice
clip
in
in
Antarctica.
43 seconds posted
Hidden
on Reddit.
spacecraft,
The title was
like
Start.
UFOs.
The
It
Demon
seems
of
to be the
Vostok.
implication.
And what
And
did it show?
guarded,
It
apparently,
looked like
by
footage
some kind
from
of
inside a narrow
consciousness
ice
that
tunnel,
resisted
maybe from a
intrusion,
camera probe.
like a
And
psychic
way down the
guard
tunnel,
dog,
there's
but
this
not a
shape.
dog.
Okay, wow.
Described
So these
often as
reports were
humanoid,
ignored,
but
filed
distorted.
away as crazy.
And there's a
Well,
bright
officially,
flash
a
of
lot
light
of the
and
stuff was
video cuts
probably
out abruptly.
downplayed or
Classic
buried,
jump
classified
territory.
deep.
But was it real? Was it
inside
from
the project,
Vostok?
That's the thing.
the whispers
Digital
started.
forensics folks
The
looked at
idea
it. They
took hold
concluded
that maybe
it could have
remote
been filmed
viewing
in a
wasn't
real
just
ice
about
cave
spying on
somewhere.
the Soviets
Maybe
anymore.
Greenland,
Maybe
Iceland.
Maybe it
They
was
couldn't
about making
definitively place it
contact.
in
This is
Antarctica
where it gets
through
even stranger,
Vostok.
right?
But it
The
didn't matter,
connection
did it?
or the
Once
apparent
that
connection
image,
to
that distorted humanoid
occult
was
practices.
out there.
Exactly.
Yes, that's
It
another
became the
layer to
visual
this
proof
whole
for
thing that's
many,
just fascinating.
regardless of the shaky
People
provenance.
within
The
the
image
program
sticks.
Okay, so
apparently
blurry
started noticing
footage.
these
What else?
disturbing
The
parallels
next item came in
between the
2023.
remote viewing
A
techniques
hacker
they were
group
developing
released this
and
big
refining,
data dump,
and practices
like
found
600
in really
megabytes
old
of files,
occult
supposedly from Russian
traditions.
sources.
Occult traditions,
mostly
like
boring stuff, logistical
methods
files,
described in
mundane
esoteric
emails.
orders.
But buried
Groups
in
like
there
the
was
Hermetic
one
Order of the
really
Golden
weird
Dawn
image.
or
It
the
looked like a
Rosicrucians.
drawing, a kind of sigil.
They were looking at
marked onto
rituals
an
for
icy
astral
surface.
projection, achieving
Black
trance
lines forming a
states,
seven-pointed
intense
star
visualization
with a spiral
exercises, the
intersecting
whole
it.
idea
Sigil,
of
like an
separating
occult
your
symbol.
consciousness
That's
from your
immediately where the
physical
fringe
body.
forms went.
Wait, so
with
the
it.
technique
People
Sun
started
Streak was
comparing
teaching
it
its
to
military
demonic
viewers.
seals
Seem
from
to
old
directly
grimoires,
mirror
like the Ars
these
Goetias,
ancient mystical
specifically the
practices.
seal of
It's quite
Ambrosius.
striking when you
now
put
we're
them side
firmly
by
in
side.
supernatural
So the question
territory.
becomes,
Going from
was the
potential
Pentagon,
unknown life
was the
to
DIA
literal demon
inadvertently
seals, which is
stumbling
where the
onto,
scientific
or
explanation
maybe
comes in handy.
rediscovering some kind of
Pareidolia.
ancient
Oh
technique?
yes, seeing patterns
Something
where there
mystics
aren't,
and
like seeing
secret
faces in
societies had been
clouds.
using for
Precisely.
centuries.
It could have been
That's
ice
the
cracks,
implication,
scratches
yeah.
from equipment,
Was this
anything.
military intelligence
But the
program
human brain
actually
is
an
wired to
unwitting
find
or
meaning,
maybe witting
especially
occult
when primed
experiment?
by a story about a demon.
pretty mind-bending
So
thought.
random
And
lines
it didn't
become an
stop there,
ancient
did it?
evil symbol.
The
Still, the
experiences got
leaks keep
darker.
coming.
They
The story
did.
doesn't seem
Some
to die.
viewers
What's the
started
latest?
reporting
The
encounters
most recent
with
piece was
actively
just this
hostile
year,
presences.
June
Hostile?
2024.
How?
They
An anonymous
describe,
voice
you know,
message sent
entering
to
a
a Norwegian
location
journalist.
mentally,
Voice message,
projecting
okay.
their
What
consciousness
did it
there
say?
It
only
was
to
short,
be confronted,
distorted voice.
not by
It
human
claimed
guards,
they
but
thought it
by
was a
what they
mineral
described
deposit,
as shadowy
reacted to
entities,
sound.
things that seemed
The frequency of
fully
the
aware
drills
of their
woke it up.
psychic
Reacted
intrusion
to
and
sound.
actively
The
tried
drills
to block
woke it up.
them or
That
push
ties
them
back to
out.
the
Aware
idea
of
of
them.
disturbing
Yeah.
something
Like psychic
ancient.
guards.
Essentially,
And the
yes.
message itself
Which
was
raises
traced
a
to a
really
VPN
profound
routing through New
and,
Zealand.
frankly,
Basically
unsettling
untraceable.
possibility.
Which is,
But the kicker
Well, if the human
was the end
mind
of
can
the
actually
message.
travel
What happened?
outside the body,
There was this faint,
maybe those
high-pitched,
non-physical realms aren't
screeching
empty.
sound,
Maybe other intelligences already
metallic
live
sound,
there.
and maybe
Okay,
they don't
genuinely
appreciate
unsettling.
visitors.
Was it analyzed?
Exactly.
It was.
Entities
Audio
that
experts
really
said the frequency
didn't want
profile
people like
matched
the
known
Sunstreak
recordings
viewers
of ice
poking around. It
vibrating
makes you
under
wonder,
extreme stress or pressure changes.
was Sunstreak
Unknown
opening doors
if
that had been
weird
deliberately
physical
shut
phenomenon
for
in
a very
glaciers.
long time?
That's
for
not
a
how
good
people
reason.
heard it.
Okay, so if they
Not
were
at
opening
all.
doors, to those invested in the myth,
What
it sounded
exactly
alive.
did they find
It sounded
on the
like
other
the demon
side?
itself.
Because
Disturbed
some of
by the
those
drilling
sensational
noise mentioned in the
claims
message
are about,
it perfectly reinforced the
aliens.
narrative.
It's an incredible story arc,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
This is
From
where
a
the story
strange
really
pressure
goes into
reading
high
in a
gear.
logbook.
We actually
to a
have
demonic sigil
declassified
and a metallic
documents, fragments,
screech in an
hints
anonymous
really that
message.
suggest
It really is.
some remote viewing sessions
But now
were
we
specifically
absolutely
targeting
have to
Mars.
pull back.
Mars.
This is the deep
Like
dive
the
after
planet
all.
Mars.
We need
The
to ground
planet
ourselves
Mars.
in the verifiable
There's one
science.
particularly famous
What does the
session, often
international
cited,
scientific
where a viewer
community
gave this
actually
incredibly
say
detailed
about Lake
description.
Vostok?
Right.
They claimed
Enough
they were
speculation
observing
for a
Mars.
moment.
What are the
Millions
cold,
of years
hard
ago.
facts?
Millions.
Well,
The key
and they
fact
described
is,
seeing these tall
no
beings
credible
Credible,
sheltering inside
peer-reviewed,
massive
internationally
pyramidal
verified
structures.
evidence
Pyramids on
supports
Mars.
any
Pyramids on
supernatural
Mars, as their
discovery.
planet was
Lake
dying
Vostok
around
research
them.
involves
A
multiple
civilization
nations,
facing
data is
extinction.
shared,
Wow,
findings are
okay.
published. So
That's
the idea
quite a
of
claim.
some massive
It is, and it wasn't just
monstrous
Mars.
thing being
Other
found and
sessions
successfully
allegedly
hidden
targeted
from the
well-known
entire
UFO
global
hotspots
scientific
and crash
community.
sites on Earth,
It's pretty
including
far-fetched.
Roswell.
Extremely
Roswell
unlikely.
had to be
Most
there.
of these leaks, the videos,
And viewers
the
reportedly
images,
described
they're widely
seeing
considered
non-human
hoaxes,
bodies, alien
misinterpretations, or
artifacts,
maybe
all
even
hidden away
AI-generated
deep
fakes
inside
designed to
classified
look
government
authentic.
facilities.
Okay, so let's
So
address
not
the
just
anomalies
seeing
the
things
original
far
reports
away,
revealed. The
but
strange
seeing
seismic
things
readings
the government
lights
was
Graycoff
actively
supposedly
hiding.
saw.
There
That's
are
the
actually
claim.
pretty
It
straightforward
suggests the viewers
explanations
weren't just
based on the
passive
known
observers,
physics of
they were
Antarctica.
potentially
The
uncovering
weird
evidence
magnetic
of
or
an alien
seismic
presence
stuff.
that was being actively
Lake Vostok
concealed.
sits in a
And then there's
geologically active
Wright-Patterson Air
area.
Force Base,
There's
right?
geothermal heat
Always comes up
and
in these
huge
stories.
pockets of gas
Wright
trapped
Patterson.
under immense pressure.
Another chilling account
That
involved
causes
a
weird
viewer who
readings.
claimed
Makes
they
sense. And the
psychically
lights, the
entered
light
a
changed.
hidden chamber deep
Again, think about the
underground there.
conditions.
What do they see?
Miles of
Containers,
ice, extreme
holding
pressure differences when the drill
biological
breaks
specimens
through,
that were
water
completely unlike
potentially
anything
mixing for the
known on
first
Earth.
time in ages.
Alien bodies,
You'd expect
basically.
unusual
That's
light
the strong
refraction,
implication.
maybe even
And another
pressure-induced
viewer,
light
possibly
phenomena.
targeting the
It doesn't
same
require a
location or a
demon.
similar one,
Okay,
claimed
but
they
what about
witnessed some kind
Kurikow's
of
most
psychic
specific
network.
claim?
Something
The
connecting
moving
human minds
black
to
crystalline
well,
mass.
something else.
That sounds
something
harder to
beyond
explain
our
away, maybe
world,
not.
out among
Imagine
the stars.
vast,
A psychic
ancient
network
mats
connecting
of
us to
microbes,
aliens.
That was the
extremophiles
report.
that have been
So you
sitting
look at all these
undisturbed on the
accounts
lake
together,
bed for millions
Mars,
of years.
Roswell,
Could be dark
Wright-Patterson,
in color.
psychic network.
Then the
It
drill
paints a
breaches
very
the lake.
different picture than
There's a
just
sudden
spying on the
inflow of
Soviets.
water, maybe slightly
Completely
warmer,
different.
certainly
If you take these
turbulent.
reports
What
at
happens
face
to those
value,
maps?
even just
They get
partially,
disturbed,
the
churned up,
implication is
start moving
huge.
with the currents.
Project
Exactly.
Sunstreak
A moving
might have
black
started
mass.
as espionage, but it
It could
seems to
simply
have
be
pivoted.
ancient biology.
It became
not
about
an alien
preparing
entity.
for contact
honestly,
with non-human intelligence.
Finding life that
or
survived
maybe more
20
cynically,
million years
about
in
making
those
sure that
conditions.
contact remained
That's
a
almost
secret,
more incredible
kept
than
far
finding
away
a
from the
monster.
public eye.
That's a really good point.
But the theories don't
scientific
even stop
reality
at
is
just
potentially
ETs from
just
other
as
planets, do
mind-blowing,
they?
just in a
Some people
different
take it
way.
even
It
further.
represents the
That's
absolute
right.
limits
There's a
of
whole
life's
other branch of
endurance,
theories suggesting
which
Sunstreak
perhaps
wasn't just
is
encountering
something a nation would wanna
extraterrestrials,
keep
but
secret initially.
potentially
Not because it's
interdimensional
terrifying.
beings.
Interdimensional,
But because
like
it's a
decades,
monumental
right.
discovery they
The
wanna
U.S.
claim
government
first.
line was
So the intense
basically
secrecy might have been driven by
supernatural
scientific
stuff,
competition
psychic
or
powers,
national
telepathy,
pride, rather than
seeing
hiding
things
a
far
creature.
away with
It's
your
certainly
mind.
a more plausible
Pure
explanation.
fantasy.
That's what they
And
told
we've seen
everyone.
this
Yeah,
pattern
that was the
before,
public
haven't we?
face. Complete
Secrecy around
skepticism.
Antarctica
But,
inevitably breeds
while that was
wild
the official
speculation.
story,
Oh, definitely.
Behind
You just
closed
have to think
doors,
back to
something
the old myths about the Nazis
something
having a
much
secret base
stranger
there,
was
Base
apparently
211,
going
where
on.
Hitler supposedly
Deep
escaped.
inside the
Right.
intelligence
Or the stories
community.
after the U.S.
It's a really
Navy's
interesting
Operation High
contrast,
Jump
isn't
in
it?
1947.
Publicly, it's all
Huge
scientific
expedition,
dismissal.
lots of secrecy
Privately,
afterwards,
the Pentagon,
and suddenly
the
rumors
CIA,
of encounters with hostile
they're
UFOs,
clearly wrestling with
flying
something very
discs
different.
attacking the
These
fleet.
fantasies
It seems like
suddenly
Antarctica
become
acts as
a
blank
serious
slate.
strategic issue because it's so
Exactly.
remote and
And that
inaccessible,
worry,
and
that
because
sort of
governments are
creeping fear
secretive
about
their
psychic
activities
warfare,
there,
it leads to
people
one of the
project their
honestly
anxieties
most
and fantasies
bizarre
onto
and
it.
top secret
It's a psychological
projects of the whole
vacuum.
Cold War. Project Sunstreak.
Nature abhors a vacuum.
I mean, just picture
and so does the
an
human
actual
imagination.
government project
If you
trying
don't
to
provide
weaponize the
clear,
human mind,
timely
funded off
information,
the books.
people
Totally
will
secret.
invent their
And
own
officially,
narratives,
the cover
often
story, or
dramatic
maybe the
ones.
initial idea
And
was
it's fascinating
remote
how
viewing. These
Right.
modern myths
This
echo much
supposed
older ones, isn't
ability
it? The
for
idea
trained
of something
people to just
ancient and powerful frozen in the ice.
distant
Absolutely.
places,
You
secret
see it in
enemy
Inuit
bases,
legends
even
about the
peek into the
Turn
future,
Gate,
all
powerful,
just using their
sometimes malevolent
minds.
spirits.
And
that
we should be clear,
shamans
this wasn't
supposedly
some
froze
like
into the glaciers
side
to
hobby.
contain
It
them.
wasn't
And in
just
Norse
a few folks
mythology,
messing
too,
around.
right?
Okay.
This was
Ymir,
a strategic
the
move,
giant,
a
whose
direct
body
response
formed the world
to what they
itself
thought
after
the
being
Soviets were
slain.
doing.
They
Born
were
from urgently trying to
It
get
taps
an
into
edge
this
in a
really deep,
completely new
maybe
kind of,
primal human
battlefield.
feeling.
And that's what we're doing
about
today.
the
We're
polar
gonna peel
regions
back
that they
those
hold
layers of
ancient
secrecy,
powers, things that
really
maybe shouldn't be
deep
disturbed.
dive
There's that
into
amazing
Project
quote from
Sunstreak
Raymond Priestley,
and
a
the kind of
geologist on
wild
one of the early
conspiracy
Antarctic
theories that are still
expeditions
swirling
back in
around it.
1926.
Yeah, because
Oh,
the
yeah,
story
that's a
goes
powerful
way
one.
beyond just
There's something
psychic
profoundly
spying.
Oh,
unsettling
absolutely.
about the
It
science
might have cracked
there.
open the door to,
One feels
well,
the weight of
alien
things
contact,
not
maybe
meant to be
even
disturbed.
some sources suggest
It's like he
interdimensional
sensed
conflict.
this potential
pretty
for
out there.
myth-making
It really
even
does.
then.
He
he
So we're
really
gonna look
did.
at where it came from, the
captures
really
that feeling
unsettling things
perfectly.
the viewers
So,
reported
wrapping
seeing,
this up for you,
the,
our listener,
weird
we've
overlaps
traced this
with
whole
old occult
legend,
stuff,
haven't we? From
and
that
these
first
incredible
pressure
claims
spike
about
in the
contacting,
supposed 2012
well, the
logs.
unknown.
Right through the
So, yeah,
missing team,
settle in. This is
the
where things get
whistleblower
weird.
accounts, the
So where
blurry
did
video, the
Sunstreak even come
sigil,
from?
the anonymous
It really
voice
kicks off
message
back in the early
screech.
70s. There was
And we've
this
put
sort
all
of
that up against the
quiet
actual
panic
peer-reviewed
brewing
science of Lake
in the
Vostok.
intelligence world
And the key
during the Cold
takeaway
War.
really is
Right.
that this
Word
myth
got out that the
persists largely
Soviets
because
were pouring
Antarctica
serious
remains
money
such a
and effort into
frontier.
parapsychology.
It's vast,
And not
it's
just
hidden
dabbling.
under
We're
ice.
talking
Research there is often
state-sponsored
classified or just hard
telepathy,
to access.
It's
moving
the
objects
perfect
with the mind's
incubator for
psychokinesis,
secrets, real or
and
imagined.
crucially,
The human
remote
mind
viewing.
fills in those
Yeah,
icy
and when
blanks.
U.S. intelligence picked
And
up
the
on
central
this,
conflict here,
alarms
it feels
went
like it's not just
big
about
time.
science
And
versus a
Pentagon
monster story.
especially.
It's
You can imagine
maybe
the fear.
here, right?
It's
What if
about
this stuff is
human
real?
curiosity
even if it only
itself.
gives a small advantage.
Bumping up against the idea
the
that
U.S. could be
maybe some
completely
things are better left
blindsided
alone.
in a conflict that
The
doesn't
drilling
use
woke
bombs
something
or
up.
spies in the
Perhaps
traditional
not a
sense.
literal demon,
So this
but it definitely
perceived
woke
threat,
up our
this
collective
potential psychic
imagination
gap,
and
it
our
leads directly
anxieties
to the
about
CIA
discovery.
starting Project
So we're left
Stargate.
pondering, aren't we?
Which was kind of the
Is
umbrella
Object
program.
47
And under
the
Stargate,
demon
you get
beneath
these
the ice,
sub-projects.
a hint at some
Project
revolutionary
Sunstreak was one of them,
extremophile
run
life
by the
form
Defense
that
Intelligence
could
Agency,
rewrite
the
biology,
DIA,
Or is it
mostly
just a
through the
reflection?
1980s.
Yeah.
A dark mirror
So
showing how
Sunstreak
secrecy
gets
combined
going.
with our own deepest
And
fears
on
about the unknown
paper,
can conjure
its
monsters
job
out of cold,
sounds,
hard reality.
well,
Either way, the
almost
truth remains
straightforward for
elusive,
that
locked
world.
away under miles of
Recruit
ice,
people,
and until we have
train them
definitive
as
proof,
remote viewers,
the silence of Vostok,
get them to project
well,
their
it will continue to
consciousness,
fuel the
basically.
legend.
And